Before we start, can we just check if everybody can hear me and see the screen?
Yes, Prabhu, it's clear.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so let's get started. So welcome everybody to Gita Gyan, Essence of the Bhagavad Gita, Level 1, and this is day 12. So we begin by offering this presentation to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And we can join in this prayer if you can. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye. So, with the blessings of Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Shabhatramai, Sri Sri Nitai Sundar Gaura Hari, and Sri Sri Radha Madhava Ashtashakiki, can begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayatim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Tat Sat. So this is recapping chapter 11, what we discussed on Saturday. So chapter 11 is called the Universal Form or the Virat Rupa Yoga. And here we spoke, these are the subtopics which I have broken down for ease of understanding. So in the beginning of this chapter, 11.1 to 11.4, this shows how Arjuna has come out of his Vishada. So by now he is already clear. And he declares this as well. You have given most confidential knowledge and my illusion is destroyed. He mentions this in verse 1 itself. And then basically Arjuna reconfirms that he accepts whatever Krishna has mentioned in the previous chapters. And he says, I have heard of your inexhaustible glories, as how you have mentioned them, beginning from chapter 7 especially, moving on to chapter 9 and chapter 10. Chapter 10, he starts speaking about his vibhutis. So I have heard about all these glories. Now, so mindful of the fact that Kali Yuga is about to come and that people will not be able to accept the authority of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, he's telling, mindful of the fact also that there are many people who will claim to be God and in this way. So Arjuna, for the benefit of everyone in Kali Yuga, he will ask, can you also show me? I want to see. Because you previously mentioned that you enter into the material manifestation So I want to see what is that form which is in the material manifestation. So therefore, with this request, Krishna will say, yes, you can see. So therefore, Vishwarupa Darshan from 11.5 all the way to 11.48. And then he warns Arjuna in the beginning, you can see everything in this form, including the past, present, and future. And then he also says you need special eyes to see this form. So he gives him divine eyes, right? And after that, Arjuna views the Virat Rupa. So he sees the universal manifestation, the entire material creation, all the living entities within the entire material creation, including the Devatas, like Lord Brahma and even Lord Shiva, and all of these people were seen within the body of this Virat Rupa. And it is described that all of these were seen in one form. So it's difficult to imagine, but as I mentioned previously, and Krishna has also mentioned it, Achintya, he has inconceivable potencies. So therefore, it's possible for Arjuna to view this entire manifestation in one form. So in the beginning, it's very beautiful. Everything is splendorous, celestial garlands, shining, beautiful weapons, and everything is effulgent. And in this way, Arjuna starts to offer his prayers. So descriptions are given of the Virat Rupa. Sanjaya gives these descriptions as he is also seeing through his divine eyes. And in this way, then Arjuna begins to glorify and worship this Virat Rupa. So we heard one or two of those prayers from 11:18 to 11:22. And then while he is offering this prayer, the Virat Rupa is changing into Kala Rupa. It's taking on a darker, a more fearsome image. So in this Kala Rupa Darshan, Kala means time. So this is the form of eternal time. He sees the future. He sees all the armies and both sides entering into the mouths of this Kala Rupa. And in this way, they are being destroyed. So then Arjuna starts to pray, oh, so fearful of form, please tell me who you are, what is your mission? And then he tells, I'm not able to bear this vision. Please show me, give me your grace, give me your mercy, and let me, by your grace, view that beautiful original form of yours. So then Kala Rupa will speak. The Lord in this form, he will say, I am time. See, as we mentioned, we have 5 topics in the Gita. So Ishvara, Jiva, and Kala is a manifestation of the Ishvara. So he is also a form of the Lord. You could say an avatar, but it's a manifestation, and Kala is only existing in the material world. So that's why this Virat Rupa, Vishwarupa Darshan, which includes the Kala Rupa, it is a material form. It is within this material universe, and it's not there eternally in the spiritual world. So therefore, it's a temporary form, and devotees are not really so interested in this particular form. They want to view and worship the form of the Lord, where the Lord is personal, having a personal feature, having a relationship with the Lord. So that is more of the type of form where devotees are interested in. So this Virat Rupa is more for the benefit of the atheists, for those who are not believers, or those who refuse to accept the supremacy of the Lord over this material creation. So it is for their benefit to understand that this is actually, and it's also to show that if someone claims that he is Bhagavan, he should be able to prove it. And this is one of the ways where one can prove that he is God, by showing his Vishwarupa form. And right, so it's never before seen. And then 11:49, once Arjuna prays in this way to see back the original beautiful form of the Lord, so then Krishna again, from the Vishwarupa form, he manifests his 4-armed Narayana form, And from there, he also manifests his original form of the Lord, which is the two-arm form. So this two-arm form is particularly mentioned in the Gita as Sudurdarsham. Sudurdarsham means it is very, very rare. So very rare, and this particular form of Krishna in his two-arm form is aspired to be seen even by the Devatas. So that is the evidence from 1152. And then why is this so rare? It's so rare because it's not easy to be understood. This particular original personality of Godhead cannot be understood simply by Vedas, scholarship from the Vedas, or tapasya, or dana, or worship. It has to be understood through parampara only by Ananya Bhakti, 1154 to 55. So that is basically what we discussed yesterday, re-establishing how Bhakti alone will reveal the Bhagavan concept of Lord. The other processes will reveal Brahman, the impersonal feature of the Lord, which is describing the Sat potency, the eternal potency. And then one who takes up the process of Ashtanga Yoga can come to a higher level of God realization, which is Paramatma realization, which realizes the Sat potency and as well as the Chit potency, which is the cognizance, to understand that God has a form and the Brahman has a source, which is Parabrahman. And that source is localized everywhere, it's found everywhere, in every living entity and in every atom as the Paramatma. But the Bhagavan realization, which is the fountainhead of this Paramatma, can only be understood by the Ananya Bhaktas, pure devotees of the Lord, through the process of what is going to be described in the next chapter, which is chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga. So these are the key takeaways. Bhagavan can show universal form by divine vision. This is for chapter 11 yesterday. Swayam Krishna. Swayam means the original personality of God, the original form. Swayam Krishna Rupa is very rare. Sudurdasham. Swayam Krishna can only be attained by Ananya Bhakti. So now we will move on to chapter 12. Before that, we have the Gita Mahatma, which I'll just read it. Ya shranoti cha gitartam kirtayati eva ya param sravayecha parartam vai saprayati parampadam. One who attentively hears and sings the glories of the purport of the Gita or reiterates that purport to others, such a person attains to the supreme destination. So this is basically another glorification of the Gita about how one who studies it or sings it or recites it attentively, and one who also gives this message to others, whether by explaining it or by giving the Bhagavad Gita itself to others. So one can quickly develop Agyata Sukriti, which is special blessings in which one can perform bhakti. Right, so today, chapter 12, it's called Bhakti Yoga. So the obvious translation here is devotional service. And it begins with this question from Arjuna. Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yukta Ye Bhaktastvam Paryupashate Ye chapi aksharam avyaktam tesham ke yoga vitaman vitamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? So here Arjuna directly asks this question to clear any last vestige of uncertainty. So two times already previously, Arjuna has he asked this type of question. You know, but that was asked based on confusion. He was confused whether it was better to. First, he was confused whether it's better to. You're telling me to work, but then you're telling me yoga is better. So he was confused with the idea of what is real vairagya. And then later, Arjuna will ask the same question again in a different way. He says, after hearing Nyana, right? Then why, if you think jnana is better, why are you asking me to do this yoga? Why are you asking me to fight? So that is basically, right? Again, he's telling Krishna that you are telling me. So if I follow you, that's bhakti. So if you are saying, however, that jnana is better, then why are you asking me to fight? Then that was in chapter 7. And then Krishna made it very clear, right? So he said that two paths lead to the spiritual perfection. So there are two paths. So one is the Nyana path and the other is the Bhakti path. And then between the two, Krishna had mentioned that the Bhakti path is better. So after hearing all this exposition by Lord Krishna about the position of bhakti and the position of the bhakti yogi or the devotee, and his own position of understanding Bhagavan as himself, then to clarify this once and for all, Arjuna inquires, okay, yes, but can I know which is more perfect? So he was concerned about the goal, because earlier in chapter 7, Krishna was telling Arjuna that the bhakti path is easier, it is better in the sense that you can achieve it, there is assistance for you to achieve, and things like that. Whereas and it's happy, sukham, right? It's a happy path. Whereas the jnana path is dukkham, is difficult path, and it's not easy to achieve, and it's very rare, and only after many births they will eventually come to the next level, and then eventually at the end of dhyana they will realize after all it is bhakti. So therefore Krishna mentioned based on the methodology. But now here Arjuna is inquiring about the goal. But what about the goal? Okay, the methodology, yes, bhakti is easier compared to this path. It is easy, however, for the non-envious, for the anasuya. So for those who are asuya, the envious, they cannot in any way take up this bhakti path. So that's why they have the other path given to them. But Arjuna is now asking, which is the higher goal? Which is more perfect? So which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman? So here he's directly mentioning the goal. So in this way, which is better? So to this, Krishna will give a very clear answer. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mai Avyesya Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upashate Shradaya Parayopethas Te Me Yukta Tama Mataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form, Mai means my, Avesha, Mano Yeman. So mind. Those people who fix their mind on me, on my form, Avesha, right? And are always engaged in worshipping me. Nitya Yukta. Nitya means always, Yukta, Upashate. Worshipping me with great and transcendental faith. Shradaya. Shraddha means with faith. Are considered by me to be most perfect. So they may yukta tama mataha, parayopetas. So he is the most perfect, considered by the Supreme Lord himself as the most perfect. So this is Krishna's opinion, that he clearly indicates that the goal of bhakti yoga is even higher. So he has given this hint few times also. Previously in chapter 6 also he has hinted this at the end of the dhyana yoga, yoginam api sarvesham, I forgot that verse. Yoginam api sarvesham. Okay, anyway, in that one he says, of all yogis, he who is in me and I am, and who is always meditating on me, who is performing yoga to me, I am that, to that person, he considers him to be the highest or the most perfect. But here, chapter 12, he clearly establishes this without any, this is the last time he's going to mention this in chapter 12, because from chapter 13 onwards, the discussion will take a different direction. it will go more into the details of the material creation and other aspects, only to culminate again in chapter 18. So therefore, this is the final word here in chapter 12 before different topics are discussed in chapter 13 onwards. So, but one may ask, why does Krishna consider the bhakta following the bhakti yoga to be the most perfect? So then Krishna himself will give the answer in 12.3, 12.4, 12.5, all the way. So here I'm summarizing some of the points. So in 12.3 to 12.4, Krishna will say, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, he's talking about the Brahman realization, which is going through the Nyana Path. So what does he say about that? He says advancement is very troublesome. So again, he makes this point, which he has made before in chapter 6. And then he will say it's difficult to come. Again, he mentions this point, which he has made this point before. And one would say, why? Why is it troublesome? Why is it difficult? So this he reveals in 4 to 5, verses 4 to 5. Because it is troublesome and it is difficult because they are trying to do something which is not within their experience. So because they, which are embodied people, I mean, embodied means within the bodily concept of mind, those who are under Maya in illusion, when they begin this process of worship and worshipping what? The unmanifested, something which is not beyond their understanding, something which is beyond their sense perception or their experience, because to understand the concept of Brahman is not easy to philosophically envision, because Brahman is spirit. Everywhere there is spirit, so it is unmanifest, formless. And then Krishna says that which lies beyond sense perception, it's unmanifested, it lies beyond sense perception, and it is an impersonal concept of the absolute truth. So because they deny the personalism of God, they don't accept God as a person, they rather want to surrender into some kind of a force, right? So it's like the Brahma Jyoti. They like to see the Brahma Jyoti as a force. So it's Brahma Jyoti means light, right? So therefore, and why do they do this? Because out of asuya, envy, they cannot accept the idea of a personal Lord who is Lord and Master. So they rather prefer to see it as, if there has to be something greater, okay, let it be an impersonal force. So in that way, they want to reject the personalism, so they accept it as impersonal. So because they accept it as impersonal, they also reject any kind of assistance from the Lord. So the Lord doesn't force himself. He doesn't, he leaves the free will to the jivas. So therefore it becomes very troublesome. Not only because of that, because Maya is very powerful. To cross over Maya by one's own strength is possible, but it's not easy. It's extremely difficult. And because we jivas are tiny souls compared to the ocean of the energy of the Maya Devi, which is the energy of the Lord. So that's why without assistance from the Lord, it's going to be easy, it's going to be difficult, especially some more we are trying to focus on an unmanifested a concept which is beyond sense perception. So Krishna is practical here. So therefore he gives practical reasons on why this is so. So in 12.3 to 4 also, as I mentioned, this is called the Nyana Path, or the path of light, trying to shine light in the darkness of Maya. So this is also the concept of like, for example, the Muslims. They for them, God is the supreme unknown. They are a bit better than the Mayavadis because they accept that God has a personality. So they speak about God as a person, but they reject any kind of description about such a person. They will say, no, it cannot be known. So that is something similar to the Brahma Jyoti. But it is done so for a reason, because later in level 2 we will speak about the different types of world religions and how it can all be synthesized, or what we can reconcile all the concepts in the world religion, and in understanding the concept of the Vedic conclusion. So that will be in level 2. But anyway, so there's a purpose behind that. But still, this is the path of light, the supreme unknown, or merging into the Brahma Jyoti. So for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, which is the Brahman, Krishna says in 12.3.4, advancement is very troublesome and difficult. So this we have already mentioned. So as I said before also, I gave the example in previous sessions. It's like we are trying to reach the top, but you deny the assistance of the personal form of the Lord, and therefore one tries to attain it by trying to mechanically control one's mind. And in this way, it's basically an uphill battle and trying to climb. So the Acharyas also explain, the Vaishnava Acharyas, they give an explanation. It's like the monkey and the child. So, those who try to go on the Nyana Path, it's given, the analogy is made that they are like the baby monkey. Now the baby monkey, when it's born, it will hold on to the mother monkey's body, like how we can see here. And this mother monkey will jump from tree to tree. And then, but it will not take any effort to help the baby monkey to protect itself, because its hands are fully used to climb. So it will jump from tree to tree. So those who are in the Nyana Path, or the path of light, due to their asuya or envy, which they have rejected the personal form of the Lord, so for them, advancement is like how the baby monkey is doing. He has to hold on very tightly. So it's fully by his own effort. And then in 12.6 to 12.7, Krishna will say, but those who worship me, upashate, mam dhyayanta upashate. But, however, those who follow the bhakti path, and how we can understand that those who are following the bhakti path, so Krishna will give these points. Those who worship me, upashate, giving up all their activities unto me. So this is like how we said about the beginning of Karma Yoga. Giving up all their, and it is continued all the way till the higher advanced levels as well. It is not given up. They dedicate their lives and their activities for the Supreme Lord. And those who are devoted to me without deviation, that means they are one-minded in their devotion. Mat paraha ananyena. Ananyena, that means they are not interested in karma, they are not interested in jnana, they are not interested in siddhis, in powers or whatever. They are simply interested in one thing only, which is to serve and please the Supreme Lord. So mat paraha ananyena, pure bhakti. And this is basically the upashate, the giving up activities and being devoted to me. This comes to the level of pure bhakti. And what do they do in pure bhakti? In pure bhakti, they engage in devotional service, yogena. And what are these devotional services of bhakti? The 9 processes, beginning with Shravanam, Kirtanam, chanting, hearing about the Lord and about his pastimes, and his and also the philosophy, and chanting, Kirtanam. So Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, remembering, Pada Sevanam, Vandanam, Pujyam, Atmani, Sakyam, Dasyam, Atmanivedanam. So these are the 9 processes of bhakti. Predominantly is the main process being hearing and chanting, leading to remembering. So this is what the devotees will do. And as a result of this devotional service, they are always meditating upon me, dhyayantaha, having fixed their minds upon me. Mai Aveshita Chetasam. So they are not just inactive, they are engaged in devotional service, but while they are engaged, they are always thinking of the Lord. Mai Aveshita Chetasam. So for these people, which is basically the bhakti yogis, those devotees who are following the bhakti path, what happens to these people? So, O son of Pritha, for them, Krishna says, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So I am the swift. So earlier in the path of light or the path of jnana, advancement is very slow, it is very difficult, it is not a happy process. Whereas you can see the contrast here in the path of bhakti. I am the swift deliverer, samudartha, from the ocean of birth and death. Mrityu samsara sagara. So the ocean of birth and death is sagara means ocean. Mrityu, death, and birth and death, samsara, going through this cycle again and again. So Krishna says he has repeated this point a few times before in Bhagavad Gita. So here's one example in 7:14. He said the same thing. Mam evaye prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. So he says, one who surrenders to me, very easily he can cross over Maya. Mayam etam tarantite. He goes on to say, just like how one crosses over this entire ocean, samsara sagara, for a devotee, for a bhakti yogi, the entire huge ocean, insurpassable ocean, shrinks to a very small size, just like the size of the footprint of a calf. You know, baby cow, calf, the footprint of a calf. So the entire ocean shrinks to that size. So very easily one can cross over that by the grace of the Lord. So this is the effect of surrender. Mam evaye prapadyante. So here, and then this is also further corroborated in the Varaha Purana. So of course in many other places, but here I just, this particular verse was very suitable for this context here. So my devotees, Krishna says, need not follow the path beginning in light. So he's telling that one does not need to follow the Nyana Path. So riding on Garuda's shoulders, I personally take them to my supreme abode. So he tells, this is another verification on the advantages of the bhakti path. So as I mentioned yesterday, the other day also, the path of surrender is also reaching to the same top, right? In fact, it reaches even higher because we develop the Bhagavan understanding only through bhakti. So it's like, you know, one has faith, one steps into this cable car with faith, and then it is able to bring you to the top very quickly in a convenient manner. So here's another verse. This is from the Vishnu Purana. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead may be seen, glorified, or remembered with an attitude of envy. So here we have this point again coming up. So what is he talking about here? He's talking about the Nyana Path, the path of light. He nevertheless, so the Lord, even though he can achieve this by this Nyana Path, the Lord nevertheless awards the most confidential liberation. So the Brahman liberation is given to the Jnanis. But he nevertheless awards the most confidential liberation, which is rarely achieved by the Devatas. Because even the Devatas and the demons, they are conditioned. So they may not also achieve liberation. But one who is, even though he is with envy, if one follows the Jnana Yoga path, he can attain liberation, Brahman. So then the Lord says here, what then can be said of those who are already fully engaged in devotional service to the Lord? So if to those who are envious itself, the Lord is so merciful in this way, what then to speak of those who are fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord? So it's a nice verse also on this point. So the acharyas, just now I gave an example of an animal, right? How we saw those in the Nyana Path. It's like the description is like the baby monkey. tightly holding on to the mother monkey with, to hold on to, so that they can attain greater heights in this way by their own effort. Whereas for the devotees, it's like the lion. Now, this lion is like the Lord. So Bhagavad Gita says, Sri Bhagavan, amongst beasts, I am the lion, right? So then in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, Kalo Asmi, Lokakshaya Krit Pravardo. So time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds. Now, if you see the lion, so you can see its teeth and everything. I specifically tried to look for this picture to show the teeth and all. So it is very fearsome. So the jaws of the lion, it mainly means death, right? So therefore Krishna says, time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds. So here we can see a picture. So this same jaws, the jaws of the lion can mean death to the, particularly to who? 4.8, Vinashaya cha duskritam. The Lord comes to destroy the miscreants. Those who are, in the Mudas, the Naradamas, the all these different types of miscreants, the troublemakers and all that, the demonic behavior and all that, he destroys. So this jaws destroyed. But at the same time, the jaws of this lion is not feared. So all these living entities fear time, they fear death. But the devotee does not fear the same jaw of the lion. Just like how when the mother lion or the father lion comes to pick up the baby lion, the cub, right? The cub is not afraid. And unlike the baby monkey, the cub doesn't have to do anything. The cub simply relaxes and it feels the love of the mother or the father when the mother or the father carries this cub from one place to another. So similarly, at the time of death, the devotees surrender to the Lord, and death is like the jaw. So the non-devotees may fear death, but the devotees see death as basically as the mercy of the Lord. So by the Lord's mercy, he simply surrendered to the Lord's mercy, and the Lord simply picks him up from one existence, and with faith, he will bring us to the next existence. And here also, this is later on in chapter 18, but I'm just putting it here because it's a very nice reference here. If you become conscious of me, Krishna says to Arjuna, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. So that is the idea behind the concept of surrender. So we have the story of Prahlad Maharaj also, how Prahlad Maharaj surrendered to the Lord. And in this way, despite how Hiranyakashipu, who had followed the Nyana Path, but he did not go towards Brahman, he just wanted the siddhis, the mystic yogas, the powers. And his own father, Prahlad's own father, such a great demon, he tried to kill his own son in various ways, simply because the son will not stop chanting the name of Lord Vishnu. So in this way, despite all the difficulties put in his pathway, the Lord Prahlad was able to always remain unaffected by whatever, just like a lotus flower in water. The lotus remains unaffected. That was also another verse which we came across in the Gita in chapter 7 or 6, I think. So then continuing with chapter 12. So therefore then Krishna says, Mai eva mana adatsva, Mai buddhim niveshaya, nivasishyashi mai eva, ata urdvam na samsayaha. Just fix your mind upon me. Therefore, in different ways, Krishna is saying, just fix your mind upon me, because that will be the way in which you will be able to surrender to me. That is the goal. Ultimately, the goal of bhakti, the process of bhakti, if you talk about the process of bhakti, the highest is to attain is to fix the mind upon the Lord. In this way, one can attain prema. So just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus, you will live in me always without a doubt. So here Krishna sets the highest standard of Bhakti Yoga. So Bhakti Yoga has several stages and Krishna begins by putting the highest goal of Bhakti Yoga. So what was that highest goal? We just heard it just now in 12.8. He's saying, just fix your mind upon me and engage all your intelligence in me. So then definitely you are assured of coming to me. But, it's not so easy to fix one's mind, because at the time of death, when there is so much of difficulties in the body, difficulties in the mind, those who are in the medical field also, they can say that at the time of death, there's a type of a fever. In Sanskrit, they call it something jwara. I forgot the name, something jwara. It's a terrible fever. And at that time, just before they are going to leave, it's very disturbing situation for the mind. In Ayurveda also, it's mentioned that the three humors, kapha, vita, and kapha, vata, and pitta, it will choke the life's air. So it becomes very difficult to think of the Lord or anything else. In fact, the time of death it's recognized by medical field and everything, that even in the court of law, it is considered as evidence. If someone says something at the time of death, so the court of law accepts that at the time of death, one does not waste time with lies or falsehood or anything else. Whatever it's said at that time is to be taken as truth, evidence. So it can be used, it's valid in a court of law. So anyway, therefore, it's not easy. My point here is, it's not easy to engage our intelligence in the Lord. So that's the highest standard. So it was done. So, there are many devotees who have done it, like Prahlad Maharaj in this picture here, who was tried to be burnt. The father wanted to burn him, and then the Pandavas, who despite all tribulations and all difficulties, they were always fixed in thinking of the Lord. They always took shelter of Krishna whenever any situations came across. So these are examples of devotees in that stage. Another example is Hanuman, who was in a very advanced level of always remembering the Lord. But what about those who are not there yet? So he begins at the highest level. This is Ananya Bhakti. This is already Bhava Bhakti at a very high stage. So then Krishna will give the next verse, 12.9. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, he calls him Dhananjaya, winner of wealth. If you cannot fix your mind, upon me without deviation, then he gives the next level. Then follow the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So this is basically the next step. So the first step was to fix one's mind upon the Lord. If this is not possible yet, then Krishna recommends devotional service to begin Bhakti Yoga. So this is the goal of Bhakti Yoga, to fix one's mind upon me. But if you can't do this already, right, then start Bhakti Yoga. In this way, by performing Bhakti Yoga, one purifies oneself, purifies one's consciousness, purifies one's desires, and develops attraction, begins to develop attraction and further intensifies his attraction, because it is this attraction which is basically desire. It's what it's called purification of one's desire. So if you remember previously, in the material world, we are here due to karma, desire or lust. So this very same karma, if it is purified and aimed towards Krishna, then the same karma, the same desire will bring us towards the Supreme Lord. So later on we will hear more about how this is done. So that is how Bhakti Yoga will actually work to purify our desire. So it's not about desirelessness. The Nyana Path, or the path of light, the Nyana Path is artificially trying to control the mind to bring oneself to the level of desirelessness. So that is a harder way. Whereas the Bhakti path is saying that you don't have to be desireless, right? You don't have to artificially give up everything. Simply transfer it to me. That's all. So one does not have to give it up. One simply has to change the object from me satisfaction to Krishna satisfaction. So just change the goal. So that is true renunciation. Not simply just renouncing, to actually engage it in Krishna's service. That is true renunciation. Like, for example, a Brahmavadi, or one who is in the Nyana Path, he will come across a flower and then he will say, oh, this flower is Brahman, and then everything else is Brahman, and then he will ignore the flower and he will go. Whereas a devotee, he will see the flower and he will think this flower as a amsa of this flower is beautiful because it is coming from the majesty of the Lord. And then he will think, how can I use this flower to serve Lord? I will use this flower for his pleasure. So that is the way so it's basically, you can see, it's how it is changed. So simply another example is food. One in the dhyana process will try to avoid food. He will cut down his desires. He will, one has to be celibate. One has to, and then maintain careful eating. We have seen many stories where the devotees control their prana and then they give up food also. Whereas those in the bhakti path, they simply, instead of eating for their enjoyment or eating food which is simply, any kind of food, they only eat Krishna prasadam. So they dedicate their lives to only eating food which is first offered to the Lord. They will not eat anything else. So that is Bhakti Yoga, how it is engaged. So like that, we can begin to understand. So this is basically what is called the regulative process. So when one does this, one is basically controlling and regulating the mind, and in this way, and it's not towards an impersonal goal, it is towards a personal goal. So therefore it's much more easier to focus in that way. And to make it even better, the Lord reciprocates. So there is beautiful reciprocation even in the beginning stages. Even in the beginning stages, there will be many instances of reciprocation, and that further encourages and increases the faith of the devotee. So, and then he does more, and the Lord reciprocates more, and then in this way, his faith step by step increases until he comes to this stage where he's able to fix the mind upon the Lord constantly. So this regulative processes, Prabhupada likes to make it very simple for understanding. He calls it ABCD. So A for association. So if one is serious in this Bhakti Yoga process, one will ensure that one is surrounded by such people who are trying to also follow in this path. So therefore one can enthuse each other and one can develop. Actually, association, it goes beyond just enthusiasing each other. It is actually one of the ways to actually advance in spiritual life, particularly in bhakti. We can see this example in so many places. By the association of great devotees, Narada got his particular form simply by their blessing, because the devotees of the Lord is like the pathway for the Lord's mercy, kripa, to flow. Imagine the Lord to be the reservoir of water, and we are all wanting to drink water. So how does the reservoir of water flow through? It will flow through the piping system, right? So, and then it will come into our tap. So the tap is like the devotee. So we can only get the mercy of the Lord through the devotee of the Lord. So therefore, association is very important. So that's why Krishna also says, Tat vidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. To serve the pure devotee of the Lord, one very quickly makes advancement. One of the secrets of advancement in devotional service. If one is fortunate enough to get a pure devotee of the Lord to serve him or her, one is able to very quickly make advancement. So it's all to be done together. It's not just A alone. It's A, B, C, D. So B, books. B for books. So one should learn the tattva, the philosophy. One should read and constantly take shelter of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this way, one is actually reading is like kirtanam. Prabhupada says it's as good as kirtanam, reading. So this, Shravanam, hearing. When we read, we are basically hearing. So that is another way of devotional practice. C for chanting. So chanting is kirtanam. So these things should be done daily, right? Especially chanting. And D is diet. D for diet. So the diet is Krishna Prasadam. Just like when someone is sick, right? There is prescription and there is diet. So the prescriptions are A, B, and C, and the diet is D, Krishna Prasadam. And D is also standing for deity. So the deity worship or the worshipping of the supreme form of the Lord is also very, very purifying. And Prabhupada likes to add one more, E. E is, Prabhupada said A, B, C, D. I would like to add one more. E for Ekadasi. So in level 2, we will hear more about in detail the processes of bhakti, of which Ekadasi or observance of Ekadasi is one of the important aspects. So like that, there are other aspects also in this devotional practice. We won't go into those details here in level 1. We will speak about them more in level 2. So here's an example, just a picture of how Prabhupada, he preached. He went to India alone, without any contact, without anyone, at the age of 68. When he was 68 years old, renounced sannyasi, without any sponsorship, no one to receive him in the West. He went in a cargo ship, suffering 2 heart attacks along the way, and then arrived in Boston Harbor on the 17th of September, 1968. And it said that he didn't know where to turn, whether I should turn right or turn left in that harbor. And with only 40 rupees equivalent of money in his hand, he came to Boston. And from there, within 1 year, by Krishna's grace, he was able to change all these. There were a lot of hippies at that time. So later on, this is a bit later, when there were some people who were already coming to hear from Prabhupada. And those people who he used to preach to them, you can see some of them with long hair, and they were hippies. They were into drugs. They were into illicit sexual activity. They were into all kinds of things. But he was able to convert them into. So Prabhupada likes to say, I've changed the hippies into happies. So they became very wonderful first-class Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. And until now, they are doing many wonderful activities in the world. So by A, B, C, D. So here, and then in 12:10. So Krishna will say, okay, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. You see, there are people who may not, okay, this Bhakti Yoga is all wonderful and it's all nice, but in my current life, maybe I'm not able to do it, or I don't have sufficient faith yet to actually bring myself to that level or whatever, or to even begin the simple process of it, or to do it daily. So Krishna says, no worries, right? He says, if you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then his next recommendation is just try to work for me. So he says, right, you are working, everybody is working, everybody has their duties. So therefore do your duty, but do it for my sake. Dedicate your fruits of your duty and your work to me. So just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So the perfect stage is the next level, which was Bhakti Yoga. So by this working for the Lord, one will develop Agyata Sukriti. That means divine blessings. And in this way, one will get purified and one will develop faith and one will come to this platform of Bhakti Yoga eventually. So that is the idea, and Krishna is declaring that here. And here I'm putting a picture of, this is Srila Prabhupada with George Harrison. George Harrison is one of the Beatles, is actually the most famous band in the world in history. So, and one of the famous members of the Beatles was George Harrison. John Lennon is one, and George Harrison is another. And George Harrison, he was very much attracted to this movement. This was in the 1970s. And at that time, when the devotees first came to England from the US, somehow they were able to attract the attention of George Harrison because they were doing kirtans, music. And then George Harrison became very interested in it. And then he wanted to also, and then he used to come and he used to hear lectures and take part in the temple practices. He used to take prasadam. And then in this way, he was attracted to the music. And then eventually they actually produced an album. George Harrison produced an album called Temple Songs, Temple Bhajans, which actually hit the charts and went to, I think, number 9 or something in the top charts. And in this way, he made Krishna consciousness very popular. But he himself was not able to follow it at that time, his lifestyle and situations. But he was very favorable. He used to help the movement. He helped in the publication of books. He used to give positive message to his fellow artists and friends. And due to his influence, Krishna consciousness was able to spread very nicely in the United Kingdom. And also later on, he actually donated property, Bhaktivedanta Manor, which he donated as one of the main temples in UK, and we installed Radha London Ishvara in that temple. And in this way, he was very favorable, and he worked for Krishna. So he used his money, he used his influence, he used his music for the propagation of Srila Prabhupada's preaching movement. And in this way, he eventually developed his faith further. Later on, he got cancer. And then when he was about to die, he actually gave up everything and he came to India and he entered into one of the ashrams in India. And in this way, he passed his life surrounded by devotees who were chanting for him. And in this way, he left his body. So therefore, this is Krishna's words, reassuring that even we cannot take to the path of bhakti yet, but one can work for the Lord and in this way come to that platform eventually. Here's another example. This is Alfred Ford, the great-grandson of Henry Ford. And he actually, he was more serious. He was one of the board members of Ford Motors. But he became very serious in Krishna consciousness after meeting Prabhupada. He actually took initiation. Now he's known as Ambarish Prabhu. He's still alive, and he's very much involved in building the headquarters temple in Mayapur, Calcutta. So like that, one who can dedicate his services for the Lord. So then, going back to this ladder, so we talked about the topmost goal of the Bhakti Yoga, and then how to attain this goal by performing regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga. If one is not able to do this, Krishna's recommendation is just try to work for me. But if however, you are unable to work for me in this consciousness of me, now this is for who? So the persons who are not able to even do this, these are those who are asuyas, those who are in the asuya mentality, or those who are envious of the Lord. So only they cannot accept the personal form of the Lord in this way. So to them also the Lord is merciful, right? Because ultimately the Lord wants is our well-wisher for every living entity. Sarva Bhutanam, Suhurdam Sarva Bhutanam, he says in chapter 5. So then what is his recommendation? He says, then if you cannot do this, then Krishna says, try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. So then he says, he recommends the person to start karma yoga. This is karma yoga. The difference between the beginning of bhakti yoga and karma yoga is that in bhakti yoga, one dedicates his work to Krishna, whereas in karma yoga, instead of dedicating the work to Krishna, they just simply do it for the sake of duty. They don't want to enjoy the fruits, but at the same time, they don't want to dedicate to the Lord also, but they just do it as, I should do it. It's my duty. I will do it because I should do it. So that's the consciousness, and be self-situated. So this is the beginning of karma yoga. So he doesn't say at that time, go straight to Nyana. This is the beginning of the Nyana Path. So if one cannot do this so this is to be understood that even working for me, even if the person is not doing dhyana process, simply he's going through his day-to-day life, but if he is able to work for the Lord and dedicate his activities and all that for the Lord, he is to be considered even greater than one who is in the jnana process. So this is the understanding here. So if you can't do this, then you begin karma yoga. And then from karma yoga, Krishna will say, you can follow the path of the Nyana Path, which is meant for the Asuya and the envious. And from there, you can purify yourself. From karma, go to jnana. From jnana, go to dhyana. And in this way, purify, come to the level of knowledge, of jnana. And from there, one can achieve Brahman. But if one goes further to dhyana yoga and meditates, he will see the source of Brahman as Paramatma, Krishna himself, or Vishnu. And from there, he will develop bhakti. Then he will switch to bhakti yoga, and then he will go straight to this platform. The regulative process of bhakti, he will go to the highest level of this regulative process of bhakti, and from there jump to this point. And from there, he's able to transcend matter and go back to the spiritual abode. So therefore, Krishna says, after taking up karma yoga, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. So he says, then go to jnana. And then he says, better than knowledge, however, because this only gives Brahman realization, is, however, meditation. So he says, go to dhyana. And even better than meditation is the renunciation of the fruits. So the end of dhyana is one becomes renounced completely. And then he is able to view the Paramatma. And from there, jump to this bhakti platform, and from there go to this platform on top. So this is basically the bird's eye view of the yoga ladder, or the pathway of how one can attain the supreme realization. So here we would like to, this is basically chapter 12, a little few more verses to go. But before we go to the next verses, I want to just give a short story on two personalities. So one personality is, both personalities, their names start with V. One is called Vishwamitra. So this is, and we are talking about these personalities. One personality took the path of jnana, and the other personality took the path of bhakti. So this Vishwamitra, he took the path of jnana. And the other personality who took the path of bhakti is Valmiki. So both also both also sages. So the story of Vishwamitra began. So Vishwamitra was actually a king, and he was a great king. So, and then what happened, once he was after a battle, he was returning back to his kingdom, and then he stopped by the hermitage of Vashishta Muni. because, passing through, and then he wanted to pay his respects to Vashishta Muni, and also because they were all tired, so they wanted to take a break. So then Vashishta Muni received them very nicely. And then he said, okay, I will prepare a feast for all your, he brought about 10,000 soldiers and elephants and cavalry and all that. So Vashishta said, I will prepare a feast for you. Then Vishwamitra said, oh no, that won't be necessary. You are just a Brahmin, you're just a one person. How can you be expected to give a feast to 10,000 people? So then Vashishta says, no worries, I can do it with my mystic yogi, Siddhi. So, and he told, actually he had a cow. This cow, the Vashishta had a special cow, Surabhi cow. And the Surabhi cow is a wish-fulfilling cow. So anything one requires, the Surabhi will produce. Especially when it comes to food, the Surabhi cow can produce easily. So in this way, she was able to produce so much of nice. And when Vishwamitra and his soldiers ate the food, it was like heavenly food, and they completely became enamored with it. So then Vishwamitra, he developed envy in his heart. And he thought, okay, I want this. I am the king, and all good things in this kingdom should come to me. So this Vashishta is a Brahmana. He should give in charity this Surabhi cow to me. So he asked for this cow. But Vashishta said, no, I have promised Surabhi that I will not forsake her. I will not give her away. So then Vishwamitra became very angry. At that time, he wasn't called Vishwamitra. His name was, I forgot his name, some other name. Anyway, that was that. So anyway, we'll call him Vishwamitra for now. So the king, he became very angry, and he wanted to fight with Vishwamitra. He wanted to steal the cow forcefully. But Vashishta, knowing this, he, with his mystic power, with his yogic siddhi, he was able to defeat all his enemy armies. The entire host of army could not defeat Vashishta. Vashishta could defeat them all. And then Vishwamitra was sorely defeated, and then he ran away, defeated and humiliated. And then his heart was burning in vengeance. So he thought, what can I do? How is it, despite my power as a king, I'm so powerful, I'm such a great Kshatriya, I know so many mystic weapons, but I could not overcome the mystic power of a Brahmana. So what should I do? So then he thought, okay, I will take up the Nyana process, and I will try in this way. So he gave up. He gave up his kingdom, and then he went to the forest, and then he started performing meditation eventually. And while he was doing this, he became eventually, because of his determination and his anger, he was able to, this was in the Satya Yuga. So at that time, he was able to control his urges. Anyway, it was a long story. As he was doing this, he became powerful, and the Devatas were afraid that Vishwamitra will take over his kingdom. So Indra sent the damsels, Apsaras, down to earth to tempt him. So the first time the damsels were sent, I think it was Ramba, one of them. So Ramba was sent, and simply by Ramba walking, his eyes were closed. And despite doing this dhyana, trying to control his mind and senses, and he already achieved quite an extent, because he already had such enough powers that he was disturbing even the heavenly planets. But even at that stage, simply hearing the ankle bells, or now I remember, it's Menaka, not Ramba. Simply hearing the ankle bells of Menaka, it broke his concentration, and he opened his eyes. And in this way, he had an affair with Menaka, and they stayed like that for some time. And then eventually he came back to his senses. He banished Menaka, and then he went back to his dhyana again, because he felt he wanted to take his revenge on Vashishta. So like that, anyway, long story, he tried few times, it failed, and then ultimately he attained the status of Raja Rishi, very powerful Raja Rishi. And then he went and challenged Vashishta. Still, he got defeated by Vashishta. And then he again continued this penance. And then he became, eventually, as he was performing further and further, he eventually came across Paramatma in his heart. He was able to see Paramatma in his heart. And then at that point, he attained the stage of Brahma Rishi. So when he attained Brahma Rishi stage, Lord Brahma himself came and blessed him. And then he said, you have done all these things simply to take vengeance on Vasishta. But at that point, after he had attained Paramatma, all his vengeance melted away. He was no longer having these inimical thoughts or feelings. So at that time, he got his name Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra means, Vishwa means the entire universe. Mitra means friend. So he became friend of the entire universe at that time. So this was Vishwamitra. But still, he was not complete in his knowledge, in his journey yet. So later, Vishwamitra, in the Treta Yuga, he came across Lord Ram. So Lord Ram, Vishwamitra would come and request from King Dasharath that he send his son Rama and Lakshmana to the forest with him to kill all the demons. So this was foreordained. It was for the benefit of Vishwamitra. So in this way, Vishwamitra had the association of Lord Ramachandra, and his heart changed. He developed bhakti towards Lord Ramachandra, and in this way, he also attained perfection in the Bhakti Yoga path. So that is the story of Vishwamitra, who took the long way. And eventually, after many, many, many years and many, many difficulties, he was able to come to the platform of Bhakti. Then we have the story of Valmiki. Valmiki, another person with V, right? Valmiki is famous as the person who composed the Ramayana. So Valmiki wasn't Valmiki. He also wasn't called Valmiki at that time. In the beginning, he was a householder, and then he was not a very high person, Shudra, I believe. I think, if I got my facts right. Anyway, he was one of the lower society, and he tried to take care of his family in various ways. But once there was a famine, and the area was, people were in poverty. They didn't have food to eat. So then Valmiki, we'll call him Valmiki for the moment. I can't remember his original name. So this Valmiki, what he did, he started, out of desperation to feed his family, he started to do a lot of sinful activities. He started to steal money, he started to steal things. Then later, as he was stealing, he became more and more degraded. Then he started realizing, instead of stealing, better I just kill the person and take the money. So he started performing murder. So he will used to wait in the forest pathways for unsuspecting travelers to come, and then he will kill them brutally. He won't care. In the beginning, he used to kill normal people only. Then later, he would even kill children or ladies just to get their money. He completely lost all shred of morality in his heart. This was such a person. Then one day, Valmiki was doing the same thing. He was waiting, and then Narada Muni happened to come. And Valmiki thought, oh, this Narada, he's carrying this Sita, it's not Sita, Veena. This Veena, it must be very expensive. So I can steal this Veena and I can sell it, and I can earn money, and I can feed my family for the next few months. So he saw Narada unprotected, so he ran towards Narada with his sword, trying to kill Narada. But Narada said, okay, stop. And then his presence, the presence of Narada was so great that simply by requesting him to stop, Valmiki was able to stop. Doubts entered his heart. When he saw that Narada was completely unafraid, he was effulgent personality, so beautiful, so something made him stop. So then a conversation took place. Narada told Valmiki, now, why are you doing this? Don't you know so much of sinful activity you're performing? And then Valmiki said, yes, but I have no choice. And this is the way I maintain my family. I'm doing this for them, he said. And then Narada Muni said, all right, you're doing it for them, I want you to ask one question to your family and then come back with the answer. And then I promise to remain here while waiting for you. So don't worry. And then at that time later, I will give you my Sita if you are not able to answer my question. And then Valmiki said, okay, fine. You look like a honest person, so I will accept your word. So what question do you want me to ask my family? Then Narada Muni said, okay, I want you to ask, all these things that you're doing, so many sinful activities. And then he gave, don't you know what you're going to go through in your next life? You're going to go to hell. There is a horrible punishment waiting for you. So my question for you is, but Valmiki said, yes, I know, I've heard about all this, but what can I do? Then he asked, Narada Muni asked Valmiki, what do? You go and ask your family, the very family that you are working so hard to provide, go and ask them, are you able to share in the sins? Since you are doing all these things, are they willing to share in the sins? Are they willing to also suffer on your behalf to take away some of the pain from you? So Valmiki said, okay, I will go and ask them, surely. So he went back to his family, he asked his wife, and then the wife said, oh, so horrible, sins, hell? No, 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 no. This is your duty, husband. Your duty is to protect us. Your duty is to provide for us. So, your choice. We didn't ask you to do all these things. So somehow you married me and you have a family and everything. So you have to do this. So I am not going to share in this sin. I have enough problems on my own. So when Valmiki heard this, he became heartbroken. Then he went and asked his other children. He managed to have many children in this way. He asked his children one by one. All of them said, no, I will not share in your sins, father. This is your duty. We love you and everything, but to come and ask us to go through eternal torture, no, 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 thank you. So we have our own problems. So then Valmiki heard this. He came back broken-hearted and he came to Narada Muni and he said, Narada Muni, I surrender to your lotus feet. Please save me. So then Narada told him, all right, I will initiate you into the bhakti process. So what you do, I want you to chant the name of God. I want you to chant the name of Rama. Can you say that? Then Valmiki, it said that he was so sinful that he couldn't even pronounce the name of Rama. So the word Rama, like that, he tried to pronounce it various ways, but he couldn't. Then Narada Muni, taking compassion out of Valmiki, he told Valmiki, okay, you can't chant Rama, but you are very expert in giving death to people. So can you instead chant Mara? Mara means death. Then Valmiki was easily able to chant Mara. Mara, 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 because he used to say Mara when he kills people anyway. So then in this way, Narada told him, you chant Mara constantly. And in this way, you will become purified. So therefore, Valmiki chanted Mara, 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 Rama. So in this way, Mara became Rama. And he didn't realize. And then eventually he was able to chant the names of Rama. Even unconsciously doing it, he was able to say Rama. And the next time Narada Muni came, Valmiki was a very different person. He was chanting Rama, 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 Rama. He became addicted to the name so much that he constantly sat until he didn't even realize that anthill formed around him, simply by chanting Rama, 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 Rama. So in this way, he became known as Valmiki because he came out of the anthill. Anthill is called Val, I think. And then the one who came out from Valmiki. So this is the story of Valmiki, one who took the path of bhakti. So coming back to our Bhagavad Gita, so this is the subtopics for chapter 12. Which is better, Jnana or Bhakti? That was the question asked, and a very clear answer was given, and why is better and all that also is mentioned in this chapter. And then Krishna gives what is the Bhakti Yoga ladder. So first he says, always think of me, right? If you cannot, then engage in devotional service, regulative devotional service. If you cannot, then at least dedicate your work and your results of your fruitive activities to me, for my pleasure. So if you can't do that, then you begin karma yoga only. And from karma yoga, you can, if you can't even do that, then you start karma yoga and then eventually go to the Nyana Bhakti path. And from there, you can come back to me, to Bhakti. So then Krishna goes on in chapter 12 from verse 13 all the way to 20. He talks about how such people is dear to the Lord. Who are those who are very dear to the Lord? Krishna Priyam. Ones who are Priyam means dear, very dear to the Lord. So these are the qualities Krishna wants the Bhakti yogi to instill in himself. And by performing this Bhakti yoga, automatically these qualities will also appear. Shreya Kaira, yes, the other day we heard the verse Cheto Darpanam Arjunam, Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam. What does this chanting do? Just like how the lotus flower will open its petals and bloom, in the same way, simply by this chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, all good qualities will blossom in our heart. So what are these good qualities? So these good qualities will make the person dear to the Lord. So here he mentions them. I've summarized them here from verses 13 to 20. Not envious of Krishna. So that's the first point. So only one who is anasuya can take up the path of bhakti. So therefore, it's the number one quality which is mentioned. And then such a person cannot perform himsa. Therefore, friend of all jiva. So therefore, a devotee necessarily has to give up meat eating and all that. So, and he cannot perform himsa to others or harm, either by body, words, or thoughts. Free from false ego, not thinking that I am this body, I am this person, I'm this Indian born in Malaysia, and I'm high class, you are low class, or I'm intelligent and you're not, or I'm beautiful or you're not. So this kind of false ego, free from it, to see everybody as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Equipoised, not disturbed, not either through happiness or misery, heat or cold, always in balance. Tolerant, titikshashva. Titikshashva means tolerant. We have a verse. Trinadapi sunichana tarorapi sahisuna. More tolerant than a tree. So one has to come to this level. Satisfied. One who is never hankering for more. He's always happy with whatever the Lord has given him in any situation. Self-controlled, does not give in to the demands of anger or the urges of the genitals or the urges of the belly or the urge of the tongue to unnecessarily speak. So self-controlled. Bhakti path follows the path of bhakti with determination. So determination is a very important key. It was mentioned earlier also in chapter 6, with suitable practice and determination, one can achieve. So determination is very important point. Ahimsa, right? Without one, so this is linked to friend of all jiva. Friend of all jiva is one is friendly. Ahimsa is not to directly cause harm. Pure in thoughts, body, and action. So that's why one of the pillars of dharma is saucham, cleanliness. Expert. So expert in any activity for the pleasure of the Lord. So to bring oneself to that level, it's dedication to the Lord. Dependent on Krishna on all circumstances, just like the Pandavas, just like Prahlad Maharaj. Many examples on that. Indifferent to the outcome. So one is not working for an outcome, one is simply working for the pleasure of the Lord. So whatever that comes whatever comes from the result of it, he is not attached to that. He is only attached to the activity to serve for the pleasure of the Lord. Desireless. So when it says desireless here, it means basically no material desires. Renounces both punya and papa. That means both piety and sin the result is renounced, because both of them hold one to the cycle of birth and death. So free from bad association. So one consciously gives up bad association or doesn't take bad association, even if he is situated in such a place. Silent. So silent here is described as not simply talking unnecessarily mundane matters only when it is necessary, but silence also means chanting Krishna's names. So preaching the glories of the Lord. Kirtanam is also silence because it is not material, it is spiritual. Doesn't care for any residence. So he's not worried about his maintenance because he's completely depending on the Lord. This is a symptom of surrender, very high level symptom. We may not develop these things immediately, but by chanting the Sankirtanam, by performing bhakti process, these qualities will blossom eventually in the heart. Fixed in knowledge. So a bhakti devotee is not devoid of knowledge. He also comes. How is this knowledge revealed? Krishna says in chapter 10, right? Nyana Bashvena. So just like the light from within the heart destroys ignorance of the darkness of ignorance. So he reveals it from the heart, fixed in knowledge. And then we come to the last verse of chapter 12, 20. So chapter 12, only 20 verses, very short chapter. Yetu dharmamritam idam yaptotam paryupashate shradadana matparama bhaktaste te ativa me priyaha. So here it says, we are talking about those who is priya to the Lord, right? One is very dear to the Lord. So those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. So Krishna is establishing here, Ativa me priya. Ativa means very, very dear to the Lord. So the bhaktas are in a special position. So although the Lord is equal to everyone, one who is a devotee, the Lord is willing to do anything for that bhakta. Just like how Krishna was willing to break his promise to not take up weapons in the Mahabharata war simply for the sake of Arjuna, he was willing to break his promise. That is the nature of the Lord. So he doesn't care what people think about himself. For his devotee, he will do anything. So like this, there are many, many examples. So it's 9:30. I wanted to tell the story of Sakshi Gopal. Maybe I can just say it very quickly in a few minutes. So here's the story of Sakshi Gopal. It's a very famous deity in India. This deity is in somewhere in the highway between Puri and Cuttack. Cuttack is a city somewhere here. From Puri to Cuttack, this is in Bhubaneswar. Bhubaneswar is here. This is in Orissa. Orissa is the state in India, right? You can see here. And Puri is the capital. Earlier we showed Jagannath Puri. So here is the temple of Shira, of what you call Sakshi Gopal. So the story is like this. Once, this is the temple of Sakshi Gopal. And this is the deity of Sakshi Gopal. Very, very beautiful deity. So the story goes like this. Once there was two Brahmins, priests from Vidyanagar in South India, who decided to make a long tour to the various holy places of pilgrimage in India. And then they came to Vrindavan. So when they came to Vrindavan, they saw a beautiful Gopal deity there. Now, though I said two Brahmins, one is the elder Brahmin, very elderly Brahmin, the other is a very young Brahmin. And the elderly Brahmin is a very rich Brahmin, whereas the young Brahmin is coming from a very poor family. But the young Brahmin was acting as a servant for this elder Brahmin in his pilgrimage. So he was doing a very wonderful job. And when they went to Vrindavan and everything, the elder Brahmin fell sick. And then the young Brahmin faithfully took care of the elder Brahmin in such a nice way that the elder Brahmin was so pleased with him. And he thought, you are such a wonderful person that even my own family wouldn't have taken care of me this way. I think you are the best person to marry my daughter. So I have a daughter. I think you should marry. But the young Brahmin thought, no, I'm from a different, and my economic background is not in the same level as yours. So I don't think it is a very suitable marriage. People will not accept it. Your family members alone will not accept it. But the elder Brahmin, due to being carried away, he said, no, no, I promise, I will give you my word. So then the young Brahmin was taken aback. Oh, you promise? So he thought, if you promise, then you must keep your promise because it's a sacred vow. So then he said, okay, but how are you going to make this promise? Then the elder Brahmin said, I will promise in front of the deity of Gopal. So this is in Vrindavan temple, the beautiful life-size deity of Gopal. I promise in front of Gopal that I give my daughter in marriage to you. So like that, then they went back. So when this elder Brahmin went back to his family and told this incident and how he has made this promise, the family wasn't happy. They didn't want to marry off the daughter to a poor Brahmana. So therefore, the elder brother said, no, no, you cannot say like this. How you can say like this? So you leave it to me, I will take care of it. But the elder Brahmana, he was very unhappy. He said, no, how can I gave my promise, but they all together, the wife, the family and everybody, they just overruled him. So then he couldn't say anything much because he was quite old already anyway. So they, when that happens sometimes. So then when the time came for the marriage, promised time, the young Brahmin came looking for this elder Brahmin and said, okay, you wanted me to, but before he could enter the house, the elder brother of this girl who was supposed to marry the young Brahmin, the elder brother got some thugs and then they chased him off. They chased the Brahmana and tried to beat him with a stick and all. So the young Brahmana ran, but he was very upset with how the elder Brahmana, he's a Brahmin, and how could he break his word? So therefore, he went to the village Panchayagam, the village council elders, and then he asked them for justice. The Brahmana said like this, he promised in front of the deity Gopal. So then they called the elder Brahmana and his family. The elder Brahmana also said, yes, the elder Brahmana was threatened by the family not to say a word, and the younger brother and the brother was to be the spokesman. The brother said, no, he's lying. He actually, when he went in the pilgrimage, the young Brahmana knew that he's very rich, and therefore he took advantage of him, and he's lying now to get married to a rich family. So then they created doubt in the heart of all these council members also. Then the young Brahmana was very sad. But then he said, but you promised in front of Gopal. And then the younger brothers, the brother said, well, if Gopal were to come and tell you, if Gopal were to come to this council and then bear testimony to what you just said, if he becomes a witness, then I will accept. Then the council members also thought, yeah. But the father, the elderly Brahmana, he had faith. He had very strong faith that Gopal will come and save. So he also agreed, yes, I will agree to this. So then what happened? The young Brahmana went back to Gopal in Vrindavan. He took the long journey back and then he prayed to Gopal. And then he told Gopal, this Brahmana broke his vow. I know Brahmanas are very dear to you. And this man is a very nice person. So I cannot bear it that he has broken his vow. So then while he was saying like this, he said, if only you could come and give witness. This is what they said, So if only you could come to that place and bear witness to what this Brahmana had said, then it will all be settled. Then the Brahmana said, okay. Then suddenly the deity spoke. The voice came and he said, who ever heard of a deity walking all the way to a different place? And then he was amazed. The Brahmana heard this and then he said, oh my Lord, you spoke. And then he said, if you can speak, then certainly you can also walk. Then the deity said, okay, fine, I will come. But the condition is, as I walk, I will walk behind you and you must lead the way and you must never turn behind and look at me. So, and then in this way, you must continuously go. The moment you turn behind and look at me, I will no longer move. That is my condition. And then the young Brahmana said, but how will I know if you are following me? Then the Gopal deity said, you will hear the ankle bells of my feet as I'm walking. So in this way, it happened. They traveled all the way back, and the ankle bells were tingling in his ears. And finally, they reached a town near the place of the elderly Brahmana's family. And suddenly, he couldn't hear the ankle bells anymore. Then when he turned back, he saw Gopal deities in the deity form again. And then the voice came, I will no longer move. So then this young Brahmana went and called all the townspeople and said, look, Gopal has come to bear witness all the way from Vrindavan. So when they heard this, they all became ashamed of what they did, and they immediately accepted. The brother also had a change of heart, and happy ending in the end. So, and this deity became very famous as Sakshi Gopal. Sakshi means witness, the Gopal who bore witness just for the sake of his devotee Brahmana. So a nice temple was built. Later, the king heard about this, and he came and he built a nice temple for this deity. And this is the current temple, and it's a very beautiful deity, very sweet deity. The smile of this deity is very, very bewitching. If you ever have, I've had the chance once to go, and I've seen this, had darshan of this deity. Very, 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 very sweet and very beautiful. Okay, anyway, so we are done with that. So that is chapter 12. So these are the key the subtopics which we mentioned. Which is better, Jnana or Bhakti, and why? Bhakti Yoga Ladder and Krishna Priya. And we also talked about 2 stories. And the takeaways are the Bhakti path is the best and the highest. And this is the recommended path. Practical step-by-step guide to achieve Krishna according to our level of faith. Devotees are very dear to Krishna, how we can understand this concept. So this is the master that we want to surrender to. So let us all take to this process with faith and surrender to the Supreme Lord, beginning with the chanting and the hearing. So here's a nice verse from Krishna Namastakam from Srila Rupa Goswami, one of the great acharyas in the Bhakti path. O Harinama, O name sung by the sages, O transcendental syllables that bring bliss to the people. Even if you are spoken only once, and even if you are spoken disrespectfully, you at once remove the many harsh sufferings of everyone. So it's a nice point here. So a lot, the holy names are invested with all the potency of the Lord. So with faith, it is able to bring one to the highest level of transcendence. So therefore, we can begin this process of chanting daily, and we can say it together for now. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Tat Sat. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Sri Bhagavad Gita ki. Okay, so if there is any questions at this point, we can have a look. There's nothing in the chat.
Good evening, Prabhu. It's Rajan here again.
Good evening.
Sorry to bother you again.
No problem. Happy to hear your questions. Yes.
No, just regarding the very nice story about Sage Vaishishta and Vishwamitra. And was it the time when Sage Vishwamitra, having been defeated by Sage Vaishishta, goes and does his penance? Was it the time that he was revealed with the Gayatri Mantra? That's my first question. And my second question is, at the time when the 4 Vasus with their spouses, when they were strolling, and then they saw this glorious cow, and the all-knowing cow, and I think they tried to kidnap. I'm wondering whether that's the same cow that is referred to Sage Vaishishta's cow. These are my two questions.
Okay. Yes. The second question first. I think it is the same cow. So when they stole the cow and everything, that's why they were cursed, and then to take birth as the 7 sons of Ganga, and then the last son is the leader of the thieving exploit, Dew. So this Dew took birth as Bhishma. So anyway, this is the same cow. And then for the Gayatri Mantra, that one I am not sure, but I presume so. It's either before or after. So definitely he in order to take this path, one has to also recite the Gayatri Mantra. So it could be during that time or the time before he was defeated by Vashishta. Because before he was defeated by Vashishta, he had performed austerities also, and he had developed these mystic powers, and he thought he was powerful enough. So it would not have been possible, I think, to have come to that level without that Gayatri Mantra. So I'm inclined to think that he would have received it earlier. But then again, I could be wrong also. It could be after that also. I'm not sure about that, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Any other questions? So I hope that's a clear understanding. I hope that I was able to present. If there is anything that you'd like to ask further also, please feel free. Either you can WhatsApp me directly or personally, if it's a personal type of a question, or if you like to post it in the main group for everybody's interest as well, that's also fine. Okay, so if that's all, then we will stop here. We will continue again tomorrow with chapter 13. Chapter 13 will be different. You'll see it will be quite different. We will go into, now in chapter 12, Krishna has concluded his discussion of the yoga, the direction of the pathway on what to achieve and the path to achieve it. So from chapter 13 onwards, you see Arjuna is already convinced at this point. So from chapter 13 onwards, Arjuna will ask details on various aspects of creation. So it'll be quite interesting also. 13, 14, 15, we'll hear more about karma, we will hear more about prakriti, how we get trapped, and all the other details. So join me again tomorrow with chapter 13. So Hare Krishna, see you everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Haribo, thanks.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.